Icy hands. She looked at her watch. Another 10 minutes. She had never been on a date before the appointed time. She was always late everywhere. But this date is unusual. It is the first and the last. If he doesn't come, she stamped her foot nervously, knocking the snow off her boot. Stop. He's coming. Her heart was pounding, forgetting about the rhythm, then stopped. Then gave out such a fraction that it began to darken her eyes. For the third time, she took out a compact and carefully examined her face. Her cheeks were flushed. She powdered up again. Her eyes glittered like a madwoman's and seemed black because of the dilated pupils. What if he doesn't like me now? After all, then my hair was longer and lighter. Although, what the hell difference does it make if he likes me or not? I'll never know anyway. My heart ached again and choked in hopeless anguish. She had been living with this feeling for 6 months. It became her companion. Sparse snowflakes were falling from the sky, but she didn't notice them. She returned to last summer. She squints at the sun and feels the hot wind blowing her hair. My head is buzzing with champagne and joy that he is near. She doesn't know his name yet, but she already knows for sure that she will never forget his eyes. Their eyes met again, and she turned away again. Damn pride born of extreme feminism. Who and when did it get into her head that she should turn up her nose and turn away if a man is looking at you? So that, God forbid, he would not think that she was interested in him. They were both guests at the wedding. She is on the bride's side, he is on the groom's side. Everything annoyed her at this wedding. Fuss, chatter, ostentatious tears, banal toasts, abominably warm champagne. She dreamed that this evening would end as soon as possible. Until I saw him. He stood a little apart from all the guests and calmly watched them. He seemed so different to everyone she knew. He differed from them both in height, above average, and physique, athletic. But the most important thing was that she felt it, not saw it. He exuded calmness, confidence, everything that she had never had. From that moment on, everything went dark and quiet. Everything focused on him. They met, sat next to each other, laughed. He addressed her as you. It was so unusual that at first she even looked around, wondering who else he was inviting to a slow dance. When did she realize that, "Can I invite you?" It was addressed only to her. She laughed heartily and gave him her hand. Her hand still remembered the warmth of his palm. She unceremoniously poked him all evening, and he never once said, "you," to her. She expected anything but such a restrained and respectful attitude. What had her life become if basic politeness seemed like a luxury to her? She was angry with herself for her sharpness and ostentatious independence. She felt his attentive, searching gaze. He was listening to her, but he wasn't saying what she most wanted to hear right now. She left the wedding alone, defiantly turning away at his offer to call a taxi. Pressing her hot forehead against the cold glass of the window of the hitchhiker, she cursed him, herself, the whole world. On the second day of the wedding, she did not go to the pancakes to her mother-in-law, saying that she had drunk too much the day before and now she felt bad. To see him again meant certain death. She forbade herself to remember his eyes, hands, voice, but every night she violated this prohibition. When consciousness began to turn off, falling asleep, she clearly saw his face. But the ghost of feminism was not asleep, forcing me to turn over on the other side. Burying her face in the pillow, she fell into sleep, as if into an abyss, and saw his face again. It was only 2 weeks later that she admitted to herself that she had fallen in love. And she began to kill this love. Everything went into action. Auto-suggestion, the voice of reason, viciously whispering, "Do you remember how your previous love ended? Isn't it enough for you?" She loaded her brain to the limit, coming up with more and more sophisticated ways to bring the body and mind to such a state of fatigue when she sees only one thing, a pillow. Business, meetings, studies, some courses, others. Constant haste, eternal lack of sleep. One day followed another, weeks flew by like dry leaves. But love only grinned, hopeless, unrequited, unhappy, doomed, self-destructive. She was alive like a freak child that no one needs, but no one will take a sin on their soul to kill him and end his suffering. She forbade herself to think about him. But at the same time she scrolled through hundreds of options in her head how to find him. She found out through the husband of a friend at whose wedding they met, his address, phone number, profession, habits. All but one. Does he need her? She was afraid to hear no. She was hoping for a chance meeting that would change everything. Fate gives each person a certain number of miracles, but it seems that she has long since thoughtlessly spent her rightful share of the miracle. And now she was standing in the middle of a snow-covered park and felt her heart freeze with every passing minute. Tomorrow she will get on the train and leave for another city, another country forever. She would never see him again. Never. This word, like a hammer, was pounding in his head, and before his ruthlessness all far-fetched fears, hesitations and the most ordinary cowardice receded. She called him yesterday. He remembered her. I set the place and time of the meeting. He was surprised but agreed. She didn't sleep all night. She looked at her watch. He was already 4 minutes late. Maybe the clock is in a hurry again? She looked at her blue-faced from the cold. She forgot her gloves in a hurry. Perfectly manicured hands. For the first time in her life she did a real manicure in a barber shop, and suddenly realized that she, also well-groomed, perfectly dressed and combed, was not needed by anyone. This thought acted as a catalyst, and hundreds of her kind burst into the brain. They writhed, raged, grinned and shouted, drowning each other out. He will never come. You'll never see him again. He never liked you. You know that you should never impose on a man. You should never be the first to call him. Never, never, never. She closed her eyes, dreaming only of dying, disappearing, evaporating, never to feel this pain again. Snowflakes fell on my eyes, melted, mixed with mascara and flowed down my face. She wanted to wipe all the paint off her face. She bent down, gathered a handful of snow, brought it to her face and suddenly heard behind her back, "Just don't eat it." She turned around and saw him. He was smiling. "My throat will hurt. Sorry, I'm a little late. Aren't you cold?" She was numb. She stood looking into his eyes, and the snow was melting in her hands. "Your paint has spread a little." He touched her cheek and wiped it gently. "Why are you silent?" She looked at her wet hands, looked up at him. He's tall, taller than her even now when she's in heels. Beautiful, too much, and answered, "I really wanted to see you. I'm so happy right now. I know that you and I will never see each other again. So I can tell you everything now. I love you. All these months I've been living on the thought of seeing you again. I do not know why you came, and what you feel now. I just want to spend the day with you. Half an hour, an hour. I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'll never see you again." She looked into his eyes, not afraid now to read her verdict in them. She wasn't afraid of anything now. He was silent. He smiled and took her hand. "Your hands are completely icy. Let's go somewhere warm. I want to tell you a lot too." He took off his gloves and gave them to her. Along with her hands, her heart warmed up. Now she knew it wouldn't freeze again. Never.